All right. Hello, Rick. Hello, Julie. Is the audio right? Oh, okay, good. Audio seems okay. All right. You can hear me, see me, all that stuff. Hello, Louisa. Welcome. All right. Welcome, Gretchen. So as usual, we're just waiting some minutes for everybody to ramble on in before we get started. Hello, Steve. Welcome. Hello, Visaka. Welcome. Get started in a minute or two. Oh, evening, Jayantha. Philip. Philip M. This is a name I think I'm familiar with, although it's been quite a while. Either that or you're brand new. One of the others, but I've definitely had a Philip in the community at least a couple times. Ah, Julie, you reminded. Yeah, I was also just looking at the Discord. That is something that I'll discuss for Bramlin Brandon. All right, start to share screen. for our introductory chanting from the Maggasekha chanting book. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Appakate manuse su ye jana paragamino. Attayang itara pajjatera meva nudavati ye chako sammadakate dhamme dhamma nuvattino te jana parame santi machudeyang suduttarang kankang dhammang vippahaya sukkang bhavetta pandito oka anokang agamma viveke yatta duramang tatra bhiratimicchaya hitva kameya kinchano pariyodapeya attanang chittakle keseha pandito ye sang sambodhyangesu sammachittang subhavitang adana patinissagge anupadaya yerata kinasava juttimanto te loke parinibbuta. English. Those who cross over. There are few among humans who go to the further shore. The rest of them run about here on this shore. But those well established in Dhamma, those who practice Dhamma, are among those who will cross over beyond the realm of death, so difficult to escape, abandoning the way of darkness, cultivating the bright. The wise go from homelessness, from home to homelessness, which for others is hard to enjoy, desiring that rare delight, renouncing pleasure, owning nothing of defilements of the mind. The wise person should cleanse himself. Those whose minds are well established in the factors of enlightenment relinquish attachments and delight not in clinging. They, untainted and radiant in this very world, attain Nibbana. All right, friends. Well, it is Monday night here on the East Coast USA, and that means it is time for another Dhammapalooza, the festival of Dhamma that with the Maggasekha community. And during this event, we will do a variety of Dhamma-related activities. However, exactly what we do is dependent on you, because Dhammapalooza is always a community-guided event. Sometimes Dhammapalooza is lots of questions. Sometimes nobody has questions and we read suttas. Sometimes there's Dhamma talk. It's all up in the air. Whenever I make the Dhammapalooza event on YouTube, I type in Dhammapalooza and the date. That's it, because I don't know what this Dhammapalooza is going to be like. Only after Dhammapalooza do I put in the title and if there's sutta links, etc. So for the next couple of minutes, if you have any questions, you can put them in the chat. If you have any topics you'd like me to discuss, you can put that in the chat. If you have any topics you'd like the community to discuss, you can put that in the chat. Also, as always, the community is welcome to talk to each other in the chat, support each other, encourage each other, give each other, links if you're looking for things, etc. I always encourage people to, to build family, to build community. The Maggasekha community and family, always encouraging this development. So feel free, even if I'm talking, if you're discussing something, that's fine. No problem. But we do have a few things already. We do have our friend from the Discord community who can't attend these live, but he wanted me to discuss a few things. And I see that we already have a few people saying things, so we'll get started with that. Buongiorno, Marco. Hello, welcome. Yep, I know it's quite late for you in Italy. That's good to see you. Past midnight, I'm sure, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe just a little bit past midnight. All right. So, just backing up. Oh, yeah, buonasera. Yeah, yeah. Well, I did grow up hearing Italian. You know, like I said, I'm first generation American from my side of the family, so I grew up with lots of Italian and lots of broken English. All right, let's get to the questions. I don't know if I want to talk about Asuba just yet because that's a big topic and we can get into it. I'm just going to check the other questions and things first. Visaka has an interesting thing. Um, you bought a donut and wanted to give half away. My intent was to limit what I ate. Turns out the server couldn't cut it in half, so I gave the whole thing to an elderly gentleman who was much appreciative. Yeah, very good. So, this is the thing about our actions. Oftentimes, we might have multiple levels of intention, and sometimes it's hard to see those multiple levels of intention because they can be kind of quite clouded. A kind of unskillful intentions can hide behind skillful ones, like the Trojan horse. Like when they put the Greeks put the Trojan horse to Troy, and think, oh, this is such a wonderful gift. And then later on at night, the soldiers bust out, open the gates, and the city's sacked. Right. So sometimes your unskillful action, especially if you become somebody who observes and understands the mind, then Mara has to be more tricky. Has to kind of be like, oh yes, this is you're a good person. You should do this. This is really good. Or it's like, I fooled him this time. So yeah, you do have to be aware that there are multiple levels of intention, and you could be masking unskillful intention with the front of skillful intention. And you know what? Sometimes it just could be that you have multiple intentions. And yeah, you said you wanted to limit your own intake, but maybe you wanted a donut. And I've actually seen this a lot with the women in my life, just throughout my life. It's like, I want this, but I'm going to give you half. It's like, I want this, I'm not going to finish it, but here, you have the other half. Like, no. Well, actually, yeah, I used to say, okay, fine, I'll eat it. And that's one of the reasons I ended up being so fat. Um, but yeah, this is this is something that so watch your intentions, and yes, you will have mixed intentions, and that's okay. If you still do a good deed, even if it's with mixed intentions and it doesn't lead to lots of harm, it's still decent karma. It's still, it's not pure intentions. Maybe there might be some mixed karma in there, but it's better than not doing a deed most of the time. Unless that deed actually does cause a lot of harm, then it's better not to do the deed, regardless of your intention. Yes, you gain some merit. Especially giving to, I mean, you're an elderly person yourself, but especially like, giving to elderly people. I think this is something I like to encourage, because in the Western world, this thing that used to be part of our culture seems to have died out. Still part of like Asian culture and various other cultures around the world, but like modern Western culture, or what they call weird, industrialized, educated, something and something. I don't know. I forgot the last two, but yeah, it's kind of like this throwing old people in away, in asylums or something, in homes, kind of a thing. So I think that's very good to do good deeds for older people. All right. Hello, Yankee. Welcome. Steve says, if hypothetically the whole world became Buddha natured, well, what is Buddha natured? Right? Do you mean like became like a Buddha, or like the Mahayana? Like, I mean, in terms of, as far as I understand, Buddha nature Mahayana, we literally all have it already. So do you mean like awakened? Like if the whole world became awakened? Um, First of all, that's never going to happen. Samsara just doesn't just magically one day go away. That doesn't exist. Um, there will be always beings in samsara. Hello, Yankee. Hello, Gregory. Hey, who are you calling elderly? If everyone practiced Buddhism, well, I mean, there's still all kinds of unskillful things that happen in Buddhist countries. So, maybe if you mean if everyone perfectly followed Buddhist sila, right? If everyone perfectly followed Buddhist, well, this is one of the things that I do say is like if everyone in the world perfectly followed the first precept, then there would be no killing, so there would be no eating of meat, right? People would become vegetarian, which would not be good for people like me, but future generations, they'd be used to it. So it would be part of their genetics. It wouldn't be an issue. But yeah, again, these are kind of like, I don't want to say pie in the sky, but it's kind of like, it's just like random daydreamings of what if this happened? I've answered this question, and people have asked me this question, and I've seen it asked on like Buddhist Reddit, and then many times like, well, what if all like humans became awakened? My answer is like, hey, that counts as a win to me. Could you imagine a whole species that awakened itself out of existence? It's never going to happen, but like, hey, that would be great. A whole species that awakened itself out of existence. That would be quite interesting. But no, we're not perfect awakened beings. So even if we quote unquote practice Buddhism, we're not going to practice it perfectly. Right? We can't, because we're not fully awakened beings. We don't have full wisdom, full insight, full understanding. Philip. So I mean, that can't make sense though, because yeah, not every possible alien species in the universe would become awakened. That would be a heck of a Fermi paradox. We don't see any alien species all in the universe because, well, they all become awakened. That would be wild as a Fermi paradox solution. Holy moly. Wow. Yeah, Steve, it's not to say that it's like, well, actually, the Buddha would basically say it's kind of still it's waste of time to think about these things. And I don't know if I want to be so harsh because, I mean, I don't daydream as much as I used to like this. I used to in the old days. Um, but just don't do it too long and too often. Keep your eye on the prize. Keep your eye on the ball. Keep practicing. And then I always say, what's the question? Practice is the answer. If you have a question, the answer is always practice. Do the Noble Eightfold Path. That's the answer. Of course, then obviously people give you more specific instructions, specific, they give you more specific answers, but it really all always boils down to the answer is practice. Yeah, Gregory says in sci-fi, um, civilizations can transcend to higher planes of existence as part of their cultural development. Yeah, that's definitely not awakening though. Yeah, but I know that is a somewhat tropey thing in sci-fi. Yeah, yeah. All right, just gonna back up on the chat to cover other questions. And now this is, of course, Dhammapalooza, not Sci-Fi Hour. So, but yeah, I enjoy these kind of you know things as well. Fermi paradox. So I've never nobody's ever brought that up before. That's gonna have to stick. I know I'm gonna bring that up some other time. Fermi paradox solution: the whole species becomes awakened. Jeez. That people would start asking about group karma and all kinds of that would be a nightmare. Oh, but then you mean group karma exists if a whole species becomes awakened? Yeah, that's why a whole species will never become awakened. I highly doubt it. All right. I see you're talking about this book, Gregory. I'll address that as we get there. Wait, I guess we are there. Well, let me talk about Asuba, just to cover that before we end up ending Dhammapalooza, and I never talked about Asuba for Brampton. So if somebody, we're 23 minutes in, so we could say on the Discord, check 23 minutes in. He probably will just watch most of Dhammapalooza anyway. But actually, usually Dhammapaloozas end up getting like over 100 views, and we very very rarely ever get like more than 20ish people on live. That's pretty normal for YouTube streams across all of YouTube. Way more people watch it later. Heck, I even watch some like podcasts like modern like health podcasts and things like that. I watch that stuff later. I don't have time to watch these things live either. Um, so all right. So Asuba. Oh, Dennis. Dennis from West Virginia, if I'm not mistaken. Dennis Reel from somebody I remember from a long time ago. All right. So asubha. Asubha. I wish I could share my cool um, Pali dictionary program, but subha, because remember in Pali, if there is an a, an a, or an just the letter a in Pali is and a with the line over it is a. So if there is a word that is added onto it an like anatta, um, then that often it's not always the case, but it negates the word. So asubha is a negation of subha. Subha means beautiful. All right, let's see. I'm going to go through the whole range here. Beautiful, attractive, that's one context. Good or goodness, excellence, beauty, that's another. Yeah, oh, the other ones are just names of people. So yeah, so beautiful, attractive. In this context, we're talking about something that is beautiful and attractive. And so asubha is not beautiful, unattractive. So in the sutta, um, wow, I'm blanking out on it. I think it's called delicate. Delicate. Yeah, in the Anguttara Nikaya. In Sutta Delicate, where the Buddha actually talks about that if you look up this sutta, if you want to know like the actual like backstory of the Buddha in the suttas, this is an important sutta for that. It's called Delicate. Um, and this is where the Buddha talks about having three mansions, right? Um, later on, he's kind of upgraded to a prince, but it never says anything like that in the suttas. And Sakyans were a republic, not a kingdom. But anyway, that's a whole aside. So in Delicate, he talks about how he had the three mansions, and everybody who lived at those three mansions were women, and he was just living this, hedonistic playboy lifestyle, had everything he needed, everything he wanted. And he started reflecting, and he said, I noticed that I had an intoxication with youth, an intoxication with health, and an intoxication with life. So the Buddha in this talks about how we're basically drunk on things. One of these things is beauty, youthfulness, healthiness, right? Somebody, a young, beautiful woman, a young, handsome man, right? We have these attractions, whatever. So, of course, we don't, most people are not attracted to old, old, ugly person or something like that. So we have these intoxications. And so when we practice asubha, we're kind of balancing it out, right? So say on one end, all here is like a complete intoxication with beautiful things, beautiful bodies, etc. That's one end. And the other end is disgusting, putrid hatred, right? What we're trying to do with asubha practices, you can see this if you look at Satipatthana Sutta, Foundations of Mindfulness, under Kaya Nupassana. You can see this in a simile that the Buddha gives. So we're not trying to make ourselves disgusted. This is one of the downsides of some time, like Bhikkhu Bodhi, and some people translate these things as repulsiveness, etc. And actually, repulsion is not a bad word, but the problem is in modern context, repulsion means like disgusting. To repulse just means to push away, right? To push away from. But we kind of have extra connotations that are not necessarily there in the Buddhist context. They can be, but that's usually an extreme. So when we do mindfulness of death practices, mindfulness of the body practices, what we're trying to do is bring our view into balance. We don't want to go too far to the other extreme. Then you do like the monks did and killed themselves, right? That old story. Because they practiced asubha too much, and so they got disgusted and hated their bodies, and they wanted to end it. That's not good. That doesn't help. Killing yourselves, that's bad karma. He's like, oh, I'm following the Buddhist teachings really hard. Yeah, no, you went too far. It's too much. And so when you practice asubha, you're trying to find the balance. And what's the balance? You're not disgusted or intoxicated. You understand this is what the body is. The body is just the body, right? The body urinates, the body defecates, the body passes wind, right? The body does all kinds of various fluid interactions and all kinds of things, some of which we are attracted to, some of which we're disgusted by. Inside the body, all kinds of things are happening. We get disgusted if we have to think about it or see it. It is just what it is. It's not disgusting or beautiful. It's just what it is. That's what we're trying to understand when we do these practices. We are trying to understand the body as it is, not be disgusted by it, not be intoxicated by it. Equanimous insight of what the body is. That's why we do these practices. All right. Moving on. So if you see me doing this, oftentimes what happens is if I'm in like a colder environment, I can trigger a histamine reaction. I can start sneezing and running, if my head gets too cold. So usually this is me just kind of warming my head up a bit. All right. Okay, so now we're up to Gregory's Living Theravada. Lots of interesting gaps between ideal and practical Buddhism in Southeast Asia. There's gaps in any kind of religion or philosophy that is pointing towards perfection of the human being. There will always be gaps. It's just how it is. So there will be Buddhists who are not good at, emulating Buddhism. There are Christians who are not good at emulating Christ. I mean, who the heck can? Who can emulate Christ? It's like, I see this a lot in political things and like in America, that people are really like that. Oh, that's not really Christian of you or whatever. They're not Christian. They don't even know the first thing about what being Christian is, but they use it as a weapon against Christians. Say, oh, that's not being Christian of you. Well, yeah, no stuff. No, I'm not the perfect Buddhist. They're not the perfect Christian. You're not the perfect whatever philosophy or whatever way of life you follow. Are you the perfect Stoic or whatever? No, of course. Nobody. They miss the forest through the trees. The idea of these things is to make yourself better. It's the journey. It's the progress to becoming awakened, to becoming more like Christ, right? To becoming whatever. It's the journey. It's an ideal. It's like a northern star, like a guiding light that's way up there. And your journey is to get there. And you're not perfect. You're not perfect until the end. That's the whole point. The end is perfection. It's like what I say about being monastics. You don't become perfect and then you become a monk. You become a monk to become perfect. That's a lot of hard work and many lifetimes of practice. That's how it goes. So it's very important that a wise, good person understands this, right? You can't hold everybody up to a highest ideal that only very few people can actually attain in any one lifetime. You just can't. Nor does that mean you should say, oh, the goal is stupid. No, also not good. The proper understanding is this is a path that transcends mundane humanity. Turn the other cheek transcends mundane humanity. Metta transcends mundane humanity. The average person cannot do either of those things. That's normal. But we do these practices to transcend, to become more perfect, right? To live and be more wise, more insightful. It's very important to understand these things. They talk about interaction between Buddhism and worship of gods, and I wonder if some kind of syncretism could develop in the West with Christianity. I mean, something like that would take hundreds of years. Absolutely. I mean, it's possible. Maybe not with Christianity, but the West is kind of built on Abrahamic tradition. So after hundreds of years, maybe Buddhism does merge with a little Abrahamic tradition in the West. I don't know. Not sure. That's kind of well after my lifetime to think about those kind of things. All right, we've reached the end of the chat. Bhante G has a new book coming out, Dependent Origination in Plain English. Yeah, well, he's 96, and until he actually dies, there's going to be a new in plain English every couple of years. That's just what he does. He really enjoys doing that. So he likes to write his books. If he lives to 110, well, you'll probably get at least a couple more in plain English books before that. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's what I try to do as well. I actually enjoy writing, but I tend to I need more stability to do it. That's one of the downsides of the nomad life is trying to build up some level of stability in terms of your actions in the middle of moving, every couple of weeks, and I'm not good at it. I don't know if anybody's good at it, but I'm not good at it. So I start writing, I get into a groove, I move to a new environment, new schedule, and it just goes away. So the nomad years have not been my most productive years. That's for sure. They've been very insightful, very meaningful, but not the most productive in terms of learning Pali and reading suttas and doing a lot of the basic stuff that used to be much easier when I was in the same place for 6 months. Let's see. Bhante, I found today a comparison between the translations in the Kala Vida Sutta. I'm not sure I know that just by its name. One translation of section 874 says, one is not without perception, nor is it suspended. I don't know what that, whose translation is that? The footnote says that form, rupa, disappears, but not nama. Any thoughts? Yeah, I would need probably a bit more background to understand that, because you know, what they're talking, the context of the sutta, what they're talking about, etc. Um, I don't know that I have much to say about it otherwise. ABW, always be writing. Yeah, I have about 4 or 5 book ideas, and I actually have, in 2 of them, I have a good amount of pages as well. Um, but I think maybe they do need more time to cook. You know, maybe when I get settled down in Colorado or wherever, then I'll have a bit more stability in doing things like writing. Of course, then I'll probably be like, man, I had so much more free time when I was a nomad instead of building Maggasekha. Yeah. You can always complain that you don't have enough time or you don't have enough stability. That's why I still, even though, you know, these are factors, I still try to do my best to build stability amongst instability. DGU, don't give up. ABW DGU. Chat's kind of quiet tonight. Kind of quiet. Let's see, 741. We could read a sutta. I've had this sutta lined up for a while. Yeah, why don't we read? It's pretty long. We may or may not get through it, but we'll check it out. With Asalyana. So I have heard. At one time, the Buddha was staying near Savatthi in Jeta's Grove, Anathapindika's monastery. Now, at that time, around 500 Brahmins from abroad were residing in Savatthi on some business. Then those Brahmins thought, this ascetic Gautama advocates purification for all 4 classes, so for all 4 castes. The Brahmins, the Khattiyas, which is the caste the Buddha was from, the merchants, and the workers. Who is capable of having a dialogue about this, with him about this? So now the Brahmins are like, who's going to debate the Buddha on this? Now at that time, the Brahmin student Asalayana was residing at Savatthi. He was young, tonsured, and 16 years old. He had mastered the 3 Vedas together with their vocabularies, ritual, phrenology, and etymology, and the Testament as 5th. He knew philology and grammar and was well versed in cosmology and the marks of a great man. Then those Brahmins thought, this Asalayana is capable of having a dialogue with the ascetic Gautama about this. So they approached Asalayana and said to him, this ascetic Gautama advocates purification for all 4 classes. Please, Mr. Asalayana, have a dialogue with the ascetic Gautama about this. When they said this, Asalayana said to them, they say that the ascetic Gautama is a speaker of principle, but speakers of principle are hard to have a dialogue with. I'm not capable of having a dialogue with the ascetic Gautama about this. For a second time, those Brahmins said to him, this ascetic Gautama advocates the purification for all 4 classes. Please, Mr. Asalayana, have a dialogue with the ascetic Gautama about this, for you have lived as a wanderer. And for a second time, Asalayana refused. For a third time, those Brahmins said to him, this ascetic Gautama advocates purification for all four classes. Please, Mr. Asalayana, have a dialogue with the ascetic Gautama about this, for you have lived as a wanderer. Don't admit defeat before going into battle. When they said this, Asalayana said to them, clearly, gentlemen, I'm not getting through to you when I say, they say the ascetic Gautama is a speaker of principle, but speakers of principle are hard to have a dialogue with. I'm not capable of having a dialogue with the ascetic Gautama about this. Nevertheless, I shall go at your bidding. Then Asalayana, together with a large group of Brahmins, went to the Buddha and exchanged greetings with him. When the greetings and polite conversation were over, he sat down to one side and said to the Buddha, Master Gautama, the Brahmins say, only Brahmins are the best class. Other classes are inferior. Only Brahmins are the light class. Other classes are dark. Only Brahmins are purified, not others. Only Brahmins are Brahma's rightful sons, born of his mouth, born of Brahma, created by Brahma, heirs of Brahma. What do you say about this? But Asalayana, Brahmin women are seen menstruating, being pregnant, giving birth, and breastfeeding. Yet, even though they're born from a Brahmin womb, they say only Brahmins are the best class. Other classes are inferior. Only Brahmins are the light class. Other classes are dark. Only Brahmins are purified, not others. Only Brahmins are Brahma's rightful sons, born of his mouth, born of Brahma, created by Brahma, heirs of Brahma. Even though you say this, still the Brahmins maintain their belief. What do you think, Asalayana? Have you heard that in Greece and Persia and other foreign lands, there are only two classes, masters and bonded servants? And that masters may become servants and servants masters. Yes, I have heard that. Then what is the source of the Brahmin's certainty and forcefulness in this matter as they make a claim? Even though you say this, still the Brahmins maintain their belief. What do you think, Asalayana? Suppose an aristocrat were to kill living creatures, steal, and commit sexual misconduct, to use speech that's false, divisive, harsh, and nonsensical, and to be covetous, malicious, with a wrong view. When their body breaks up after death, they'd be reborn in a place of loss, a bad place, the underworld, hell. Would that happen only to an aristocrat and not a Brahmin? Or suppose a peasant or a menial were to act in the same way. Would that result befall only a peasant or a menial and not a Brahmin? No, Master Gautama, if they acted the same way, the same result would befall an aristocrat, a Brahmin, a peasant, or a menial. For if any of the four classes were to kill living creatures, steal, and commit sexual misconduct, to use speech that's false, divisive, harsh, and nonsensical, and to be covetous, malicious, and with a wrong view, then when their body breaks up after death, they'd be reborn in a place of loss, a bad place, the underworld, hell. And what is the source of the Brahmin's certainty and forcefulness in this matter that they make this claim? Even though you say this, still the Brahmins maintain their belief. What do you think, Asalayana? Suppose a Brahmin were to refrain from killing living creatures, stealing and committing sexual misconduct, from using speech that's false, divisive, harsh, or nonsensical, and from covetousness, malice, and wrong view. When their body breaks up after death, they'd be reborn in a good place, a heavenly realm. Would this happen to only a Brahmin and not to an aristocrat, peasant, or menial? No, Master Gautama, if they acted in the same way, the same result would befall that an aristocrat, a Brahmin, a peasant, or a menial. For if any of the four classes were to refrain from killing living creatures, stealing, committing sexual misconduct, from using speech that's false, divisive, harsh, or nonsensical, and from covetousness, malice, and wrong view. Then, when their body breaks up after death, they'd be reborn in a good place, the heavenly realm. Then what is the source of the Brahmin's certainty and forcefulness in this matter that they make this claim? Even though you say this, still the Brahmins maintain their belief. What do you think, Asalayana? Is only a Brahmin capable of developing a heart of love, free of enmity and ill will for this region, and not an aristocrat, peasant, or menial? No, Master Gotama. Aristocrats, Brahmins, peasants, and menials can all do so. For all four classes are capable of developing a heart of love, free of enmity and ill will for this region. Then what is the source of the Brahmin's certainty and forcefulness in this matter that they make this claim? Even though you say this, still the Brahmins maintain their belief. What do you think, Asalayana? Is only a Brahmin capable of taking some bathing cleanser, going to the river and washing off dust and dirt, and not an aristocrat, peasant, or menial? No, Master Gotama, all four classes are capable of this. Then what is the source of the Brahmin's certainty and forcefulness in this matter that they make this claim? Even though you say this, still the Brahmins maintain their belief. What do you think, Asalayana? Suppose an anointed aristocrat were to gather 100 people of various births and say to them, "Please, gentlemen, let anyone here who has born in a family of aristocrats, Brahmins, or chieftains take a drill stick made of teak, sal, frankincense wood, sandalwood, or cherry wood, light a fire, and produce heat. And let anyone here who is born in a family of corpse workers, hunters, bamboo workers, chariot makers, or scavengers take a drill stick made from a dog's drinking trowel, a pig's trowel, a dustbin, or a cast oil wood, light a fire, and produce heat. What do you think, Asalayana? Would only the fire produced by the high-class people with good quality wood have flames, color, and radiance and be usable as fire, and not the fire produced by the low-class people with poor quality wood? No, Master Gotama, the fire produced by the high-class people with good quality wood would have flames, color, and radiance and be usable as fire, and so would the fire produced by the low-class people with poor quality wood. For all fire has flames, color, radiance, and is usable as fire. Then what is the source of the Brahmin's certainty and forcefulness in this matter that they make this claim? The Buddha is making these logical claims, using reason, logic, and Dhamma, and he's making points, and this young Brahmin is kind of like, yeah, I can see this, but the Brahmins still, hold to their views. Right? This is how they view things. What do you think, Asalayana? Suppose an aristocrat boy were to sleep with a Brahmin girl and they had a child. Would that child be called an aristocrat after the father or a Brahmin after the mother? They could be called either. What do you think, Asalayana? Suppose a Brahmin boy was to sleep with an aristocrat girl and they had a child. Would that child be called an aristocrat after the mother or a Brahmin after the father? They could be called either. What do you think, Asalayana? Suppose a mare were to mate with a donkey and she gave birth to a mule. Would that mule be called a horse after the mother or a donkey after the father? It's a mule, as it's a crossbreed. I see the difference in this case, but not in the previous case. What do you think, Asalayana? Suppose there were two Brahmin students who were brothers who had shared a womb. One was educated reciter, while the other was not an educated reciter. Who would the Brahmins feed first at an offering of food for ancestors, an offering of a dish of milk rice, a sacrifice, or a feast for guests? They'd first feed the student who was an educated reciter. So the Buddha is making the case here. This is actually quite ingenious. Two Brahmins born at the same time from the same mother, and this Brahmin is saying that they would respect more the one who is the reciter, right? So Buddha is pointing towards your actions being what is important. They'd first feed the student who was an educated reciter. For how could an offering to someone who was not an educated reciter be very fruitful? What do you think, Asalayana? Suppose there were two Brahmin students who were brothers who had shared a womb. One was an educated reciter but was unethical, of bad character, while the other was not an educated reciter but was ethical and of good character. Who would the Brahmins feed first? They'd first feed the student who was not an educated reciter but was ethical and of good moral character. For how could an offering to someone who is unethical and of bad character be very fruitful? Firstly, you relied on birth, Asalayana. Then you switched to education. Then you switched to abstemious behavior. Now you've come around to believing in purification for all four classes, just as I advocate. When he said this, Asalayana sat silent, dismayed, shoulders drooping, downcast, depressed with nothing to say. Keep in mind, Asalayana is 16 years old. Now, granted, in ancient times, 16 was fairly old, like you were in wars and all kinds of, you were married often, so it's not like he's a baby, but he, compared to the Buddha, he's still like a pup. So he had no chance going against the Buddha. That's why he was like, why am you sending me against Gautama? Are you kidding me? Shoulders drooping, downcast, depressed, with nothing to say. Sounds like a typical 16-year-old. Knowing this, the Buddha said to him, once upon a time, Masalayana, 7 Brahmin seers settled in leaf huts in the wilderness region. They had the following harmful misconceptions. Only Brahmins are the best class, other classes are inferior. Only Brahmins are the light class, other classes are dark. Only Brahmins are purified, not others. Well, only Brahmins are Brahma's rightful sons, born of his mouth, born of Brahma, created by Brahma, heirs of Brahma. The seer Devala, the dark, heard about this. Yeah. So he did up his hair and beard, dressed in magenta robes, put on his boots, grasped a golden staff, and appeared in the courtyard of the 7 Brahmin seers. Then he wandered about the yard, saying, where, oh, where have those Brahmin seers gone? Where have they gone? Those Brahmin seers said, who's this wandering about our courtyard like a village lout? Let's curse him. So they cursed Devala the dark. Be ashes, low life. Be ashes, low life. But the more the seers cursed him, the more attractive, good-looking, and lovely Devala the dark became. Similar to the sutta about the anger-eating demon, sutta called Ugly. Then those Brahmin seers said, our fervor is in vain, our spiritual path is fruitless. For when we used to curse someone to become ashes, ashes they became. But the more we curse this one, the more attractive, good-looking, and lovely he becomes. Gentlemen, your fervor is not in vain, your spiritual path is not fruitless. Please let go of your malevolence towards me. We let go of our malevolence towards you. But who are you, sir? Have you heard of the seer Devala the dark? Yes, sir. I am he, sirs. Then they approached Devala and bowed to him. Devala said to them, I heard that when the 7 Brahmin seers had settled in leaf huts in the wilderness region, they had the following harmful misconceptions. Only Brahmins are the best class, other classes are inferior. Only Brahmins are the light class, other classes are dark. Only Brahmins are purified, not others. Only Brahmins are Brahma's rightful sons, born of his mouth, born of Brahma, created by Brahma, heirs of Brahma. That's right, sir. But do you know whether your birth mother only had relations with a Brahmin and not with a non-Brahmin? We don't know that. But do you know whether your birth mother's mother, back to the 7 generations, only had relations with Brahmins and not with non-Brahmins? We don't know that. But do you know whether your birth father only had relations with a Brahmin woman and not with non-Brahmin? We don't know that. But do you know whether your birth father's back to the 7th generation only had relations with Brahmins and not with non-Brahmins? We don't know that. But do you know how an embryo is conceived? We do know that, sir. An embryo is conceived when these 3 things come together. The mother and father come together. The mother is in the fertile phase of her menstrual cycle. and the virile spirit is ready. But do you know for sure whether the virile spirit is an aristocrat, a Brahmin, a peasant, or a menial? We don't know that. In this case, sirs, don't you know what you are? In that case, sir, we don't know. Given that even those 7 Brahmin seers could not prevail when pursued, pressed, and grilled by seer Devala on their own genealogy, how could you prevail, now being grilled by me, on your own genealogy when you and your tradition do not so much as pick up the last spoonful? When he had spoken, Asalayana said to him, Excellent Master Gota, excellent. From this day, may guest Master Gotama remember me as a lay follower who has gone for refuge for life. All right. Hello, Karuna. Welcome. Curious if you have a clear idea how you would want lay and monastic Buddhists to interact in your future monastery and how you might accommodate needs for worldly success that many lay folks aim for. What do you mean accommodate needs for worldly success? Can you clarify that for me? So I would say that how I view Maggasekha, the relationship between lay and monastics, will be the relationship that the Buddha laid down in the suttas. Right? This kind of symbiotic relationship where monks and lay people are a bit more on even footing, a bit more working together. Monks not put on pedestals. Of course, monks need to be respected, and they play an important role. It's not to, I think that the kind of Protestant ethic of we don't need monks. I don't think that's real Buddhism. I don't think that's actual Buddhism that survives intact. Monks are just as important as lay people in maintaining Buddhism. So I do feel like monks should be respected, right? And monks should be dignified, etc. So all of that comes down from the suttas, and even through much of the living Buddhist traditions, will be kept in Maggasekha. Of course, obviously, we will, I think we will need to make different exceptions for being in the West and things like that. But Maggasekha, I wish to be like Bhavana and like Empty Cloud and some other places where you can go there on a weekend or a retreat and you'll see Thai people and Sri Lankan people and Burmese people and Western converts and spiritual people who are not maybe Buddhist, but they're looking into Buddhism, and like you just meet all kinds of people like at a place like Bhavana. And that's kind of what I want Maggasekha to be. Modernized traditional. What did Dr. Green, what did she call herself? An innovative traditionalist. This Dr. Green is a lay teacher who studied under Ayakema and some other of Ayakema's students, and she started a place in Colorado, a Theravada not a monastery, a Theravada kind of lay place in Colorado like 25 years ago. And I got to go to her place and spend time with her and learn from her. And we connected in many ways because when she called herself an innovative traditionalist, I knew exactly what that meant because I'm the same way. I'm exactly that. And that's what Maggasekha will be. Innovative traditionalism, right? We have to innovate. We have to adapt a little bit. But we shouldn't just throw away the tradition either, right? Innovative traditionalism. That's going to be I told her I'm going to steal that because that's such a perfect way of putting exactly how I feel. So, yeah. Did I miss a question, Rick? Uh, oh, I did miss a question. I did miss a question. All right, Rick. Yes. Thanks for saying that. I will. Um, oh, Gregory, you know Rocky Mountain Insight. Yes. Yep. Yeah. Dr. Green and I connected like almost like two old souls. It was a very, very quick connection, I felt. Um, but let me continue with Gregory's, and then I'll go back to yours question, Rick. So no amulets, I suppose, at least. So no amulets. Um, it's tough. There has to be a balance. I was literally actually just asked if I could do a house blessing. I was like, part of me is like, Buddha said monks doing house blessings is considered bad, wrong livelihood, and I don't want to do house blessings. But then also the Buddha's like, when people were Buddha said not stop. Monks should not be saying bless you when somebody sneezes and things like this. This is a rule if you didn't know. Modern Abrahamic tradition, we say bless you when somebody sneezes. In ancient India, they would say long life, long life. It's basically the same thing. It's like, oh, you might be sick. Well, may God bless you. Or long life. May you live long. May you live long. May the devas protect you. Right. And so the Buddha says, well, monks, if on account of you saying long life, would that mean that the person would live a long life? And the monks are like, no. And the Buddha's like, well, then why say it? Don't be silly. But then what happened was the laity would say long life to the monks, and the monks would not say back. And the laity got kind of agitated about it. And the Buddha says that this is literally a line in the suttas. The Buddha said, monks, lay people like superstition. So I allow you that if they say long life, you can say long life back. Right? So the Buddha sets a precedent there by saying, to kind of go along to get along, even though, it's really not, it doesn't really mean anything. Somebody wants you to bless their house. Is it really that bad of a thing? I go back and forth on these things. Like, to me, it's like, in the suttas say, the Buddha says, house blessing is wrong livelihood. I'm not going to do it. But then if somebody nice person who supports me, very nice, they're tradition, they come from a traditional Buddhist culture. They ask me for a house blessing. Do I say, no, that's stupid, I'm not going to do it? Probably I'm going to incline more towards, okay, we'll do the house blessing. Like, does it mean anything? No. Is it a waste of my time? No, I don't think it is, because these are some people who support me. I'm doing something kind for them. If they feel benefited from it, why not? You know. Now, of course, if they really were long-term supporters, I would incline them to move towards away from those things. But you have to find a balance somewhere, I think, with that. It's something I go back and forth on a lot. All right, I think we can go back to Rick's question that I missed from the beginning. All right. Bante, can you talk about the types of joys we can experience from practicing various virtues? Hmm. I think what the Buddha talks most about is the joy of lack of restlessness and remorse, right? The lack of worry you have because you do good deeds, because you refrain from bad deeds, right? So you don't have lots of restlessness, worries about the future lives, or worries about what other people you might have harmed might do to you in this life. That's like the greatest benefit of practicing virtues, that you're living a much more harmless life towards others and towards yourself than the average person. So you will experience likewise less restlessness and remorse, less suffering in that regard. Like, even if people oppress you, if you know in your mind that you have nothing to be sorry for, that you've done nothing wrong, then you can deal with it. People throughout history, you've seen this, like the Christians being thrown to the lions or whatever. Like if you are firm in your views, and know of your own goodness, nobody can tell you otherwise, because in your own mind, there's no doubts that you have these virtues. You do good. Of course, there's other kind of that's I think that's the most important aspect of joy from practicing virtue. Then there's other aspects of seeing people's reactions to your good deeds, right? That's something that can be very beneficial, very, it makes you feel very good to see people benefited from your good deeds. Even like beyond your own lifetime too. You can think like one of my favorite sayings. It's not a Buddhist saying, but it is a guiding light for me in many ways, especially in building Maggasekha. Um, it's the kind of the say one of the main sayings of my adult life, and the saying is, a wise man plants trees under which he knows he will never sit. Right? You're doing something that only like future generations will benefit from, right? And you can kind of rest assured, you can go to your death knowing like I've done good things in the world. I've set good things in motion that will benefit people long after I'm gone. That's a pretty good way to end your life, I would say. Better than lots of regrets, you know, much better than that. I think that's a good enough response for that. All right. So we've come to the end of the chat. Why don't we do? I'm a little tired, and I don't think we'll do a full meditation, but we should do at least a little bit of meditation, and then we'll call it a night by reading some Dhammapada and doing our business and sharing merits. So why don't we do some meditation? I'm not going to do any guided. Most of you have probably heard my guided meditations many times. So we'll just meditate silently together for a little while. Slowly start to open your eyes, becoming aware of the room around you and the people in it, reflecting on the state of your mind before and after the meditation, contemplating any experiences that stand out. And while we do that, we'll read some Dhammapalooza. All right. Affection. Giving himself to things to be shunned and not exerting where exertion is needed. A seeker after pleasures, having given up his true welfare, envies those intent upon theirs. Seek not intimacy with the beloved, and also not with the unloved. For not to see the beloved and to see the unloved, both are painful. Therefore, hold nothing dear, for separation from the dear is painful. There are no bonds for those who have nothing beloved or unloved. From endearment springs grief, from endearment springs fear. For one who is wholly free from endearment, there is no grief. Whence then fear? From affection springs grief, from affection springs fear. For one who is wholly free from the affection, there is no grief. Whence then fear? From attachment springs grief, from attachment springs fear. For one who is wholly freed from attachment, there is no grief. Whence then fear? From lust springs grief, from lust springs fear. For one who is wholly free from craving, there is no grief. Whence then fear? From craving springs grief, from craving springs fear. For one who is wholly free from craving, there is no grief. Whence then fear? People hold dear him who embodies virtue and insight, who is principled, has realized the truth, and who himself does what he ought to be doing. One who is intent upon the ineffable, nibbana, dwells with a mind inspired by supermundane wisdom, and is no more bound by sense pleasures. Such a man is called one bound upstream. When after a long absence a man safely returns from afar, his relatives, friends, and well-wishers welcome him home on arrival. As kinsmen welcome a dear one on arrival, even so his own good deeds will welcome the doer of good who has gone from this world to the next. All right. Let's do our business. We'll make it quick tonight. So, if this is your first time watching this stream and you'd like to follow or learn more about myself and the organization Maggasekha, you can go to the website listed on the screen, maggasekha.org, MAGGA, which means the path, as in the Noble Eightfold Path, SEKHA, which means a trainee or a student. So Maggasekha.org is my headquarters, the website. Any updates, any activities that I do, YouTube videos, live streams, retreats. Have 2 retreats coming up, one in February and one in March, Zoom retreats. And all of my activity you can find by going to the website, and you can find all the information there. You can put your email in the top right on the website, and you'll get an email anytime I post a new update. All right. We'll share merit. Dukkha patta chani dukkha, bhaya patta chani bhaya, sukha patta chani sukha, hantu sabbe pipaniyo, etta bhatta cha mehi sampadang punya sampadang, sabbe deva anumodantu sabba sampatti siddhya, akasatta chabumatta deva naga mahiddhika, punyantang anumoditva charang rakantu sasanam. May the suffering ones be suffering free, and the fear-struck fearless be. May the grieving shed all grief, and may all beings find relief. May all beings share this merit of ours that we've thus acquired for the acquisition of all kinds of happiness. May beings inhabiting space and earth, devas, nagas, and yakas of mighty power, share this merit of ours. May they long protect the Buddhist dispensation. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. All right, friends, that is the end of another Dhammapalooza. Sukhi Hotu, may you be well and at ease. Practice well and be well. May you have a spiritually successful and peaceful practice until we meet again. Have a good week.